Hey folks, I'm Mark. You're watching Trapper Woody. I just wanted to come outside today, sit beside a little fire in the backyard, tell you a little story. I'm going to show you the picture. Then I'm going to go sit on my chair. I'm going to be out of the camera. But this was back in 2010. It was my first beaver I caught. Big Beaver. There's a little story that goes behind this. It's kind of funny, and I want to tell you about it. So I want to have the campfire going here and show you it. So there's my first beaver. I went out to a local creek, and I knew there was beavers in the area, and I wanted to go after a beaver, and I wanted to finally catch a beaver. I've been trapping for 35 years, something like that. 35 years. Never went after beavers. But that year I decided I had been doing some fishing and some duck hunting on this creek, and I found where the beavers were at, where they were feeding. So I thought, I'm going to come back there in beaver season when muskrats and mink are still in. The beginning of beaver season in Pennsylvania used to start the day after Christmas. And for like a week and a half, muskrat and mink would still be in. So I would set for muskrat, mink, raccoon, fox, coyotes, and I set for beaver on the 26th. I set the traps. There was this little creek that might have been, I wouldn't even call it a creek. The creek that was the beavers were in is a big well-known creek in my area. And there's a little feeder stream, creek, whatever you want to call it, that feeds into it. And yeah, all I can do is just take a step across it, and that's how wide it is. It's not a big step. Well, there's no deep spots in it. It's just a little feeder water that goes in this big creek. So I knew the beavers were coming into this area, and they were going up into a field and cutting trees. So I decided I was going to put a cable restraint, is what I call them, but Pennsylvania calls them snares. We don't have legal snares in Pennsylvania. They don't lock down and keep locking down like true snares do. Our beaver snares are just like our cable restraints. It's a relaxing lock that's on it. When the animal pulls, the cable pulls tight. When the animal relaxes, it relaxes, but it doesn't open up that the animal can get out of it. So, at the deep part of the big creek where this little feeder stream came in, I set the cable. I had made a 10-inch loop. I had half the cable in the water and half the cable out. And I took a great big rock and put in this little feeder creek, whatever you want to call it, and it was out of water, and I put caster on it. And I went on my way, setting the traps for muskrats and more beaver and mink and raccoons and coyotes and fox. I go home at night. I'm like, yeah, I ain't gonna catch no beaver. I don't know how to trap for them. This is my first time trying it out. Well, and the next morning I go down. It's just getting daylight. I'm in my canoe and I'm paddling down the stream and I'm checking my traps. And I got some muskrats and some a raccoon, a mink, and I get to this little feeder streams coming into the big creek. And I looked and I could see. What I did was I made a slide grounder with 50 pounds of rocks in a burlap bag in about 20 feet of water. And what I had was I had it set up that the cable could only go one way. When the beaver got into it, it had to go down to the end of that drowning line, and it would drown. Well, I go down through and I get to where this is set, and I looked and I went, wait a minute, my cable isn't there. So I'm looking, and I didn't paddle into shore. I'm out in the middle of the creek, and I'm looking, and I'm looking. And finally I see my line that I had the snare set up on to get down in the water. It's up on the bank. And there's my bag, my burlap bag with 50 pounds of weight in it, sitting up on the bank. And beside the burlap bag is this stump. And I thought, well, that's strange. That stump wasn't there yesterday. So I paddled the canoe in. I get out of the canoe and I go walking up to it, and I got probably about 5 feet away from it and realized it was a beaver. He had his tail flat on the ground. He had his head balled up underneath his stomach, and he looked like a stump. So I dispatched him, brought him home. Everybody, a couple of my friends saw it in the back of the truck. They thought I had a baby bear. I'm like, yeah, bears don't have big flat tails on the back end of them like that. So I skinned it out, took care of the hide, put it on a board, and I decided, you know, I've always heard that beaver is really good to eat. Never had it before. So I cut it all up, cleaned it up, put it in a vacuum pack bag and put it in the freezer. Now that was the 27th of December that year. About the middle of February, I decided one night, I was dealing with my back. I got back problems. That'll be on another video. And I decided that night, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm gonna get that beaver out and let it fall out overnight until tomorrow night. And I'm gonna put it in a slow cooker and cook it. So I looked up on the internet how to cook it, how to barbecue it in a slow cooker. And it said about how you take all the fat off it. I took the back legs and I took the back straps out of it, took all the fat off it, and it said to soak it for like 10 minutes in apple cider vinegar. So I put it in a Ziploc bag and put apple cider vinegar on it. Now mine, this is 11 o'clock at night. My wife's in bed, my daughter's in bed, my father-in-law lives with us, so he's in bed. And I get it all, you know, soaked in the vinegar, and I get the slow cooker out, the crock pot, put it in there, and I made up my homemade barbecue sauce that I always make for whenever I'm making deer barbecue. And I put it on it, turned it on, left it go. I went and laid down on the couch in the basement, turned the TV on, and fell asleep. Now I had traps to run the next morning. I had a trap line to run the next morning. Trapping season was still in, and I had some nuisance customers that I had to take care of their traps being checked. So I got up in the morning, probably about 7 o'clock in the morning, and pulled all the bones out of the meat, tore it all up, left it in the crock pot, and it was done. So I made myself a sandwich and I took it along with me, and I ate it. It was really good. Oh, it's phenomenal. It's better than beef. So I'm out all day long, and I come home about 7 o'clock at night, and I'm thinking the whole time I'm coming home, I'm gonna have another beaver barbecue sandwich. Ah, that stuff's good. So I come home, crock pot's all cleaned up, put away, and thought, okay. The beautiful doe deer, she got into it, and she cleaned it up and put it in a container, put it in the refrigerator. So I opened up the refrigerator. There's none left. So I said to her, I went in the room and I said, hey, what happened to that barbecue I made? She goes, oh, that was the best barbecue. My father-in-law was ranting and raving about it. My daughter was ranting and raving about it. It was the best barbecue they ever had. So I didn't say nothing. Left it go at that. I said, okay, good barbecue. It was really good. Like I said, it was better than beef, and I hate to say it, I really love deer meat, but it was better than deer meat. So that was in February. Some months go by and July comes around, and my daughter says to me one day, we're sitting outside, had a little fire going. She says, hey Dad, she goes, can you make some deer barbecue for Sunday afternoon for dinner, so we can have deer barbecue like you made in February? And I said, no, I can't. And my wife's sitting there and she goes, why? I said, I don't got no meat. My wife says, there's deer meat in the freezer. I started laughing. I said, that wasn't deer meat. And she said, what? I said, you remember that great big beaver? That great big beaver that I caught? She says, yeah. I said, that was the back legs and the back straps out of it. I said, I got one sandwich out of it. And I said, you guys ate all of it and raved about how good it was. They got so mad because I didn't tell them it was beaver meat. And I said, you know, I said, you never asked. You never called me up on the phone whenever I was out doing my jobs and checking my trap line. And, you know, you ate it and you loved it. You didn't know what it was. So, pretty much to this day, my father-in-law and my wife and my daughter will not eat anything that I make unless they see what it is that I'm making. They got to make sure it's deer meat, or they got to make sure it's beef, or they got to make sure it's pork. This is kind of funny because I think it's funny, and a lot of my friends thought it was funny. They ate something that they had no clue what it was, and it was the best barbecue in the world until, you know, February, March, April, May, June, July. 5 months later, my daughter asked me to make more of it, and I said I didn't have the meat. My wife said, yeah, we got deer meat. And I said, no, it was beaver. They didn't like it, but they loved it whenever they ate it. Just some stories that I want to be able to tell, and I just wanted to come out here today and sit beside the fire. And the weekend's coming up, we're going to get more snow. I just love the snow. I think it's beautiful whenever the yard's white with the snow on it. I love it falling. I'm looking forward here to the snow coming this weekend. They say that next week it's going to be a lot of different storms coming through. I'll be in heaven all week long with the snowfall. I love it. So that's just something that I wanted to tell you a little story about. I told my brother, my oldest brother, who taught me a lot about stuff, and he said, oh yeah, he says, did you eat the tail? And I said, no. I said I didn't. And I said, I know that people eat them, but then I had a couple guys tell me that it's just fat and there's really no meat to it. So I said, I didn't use it. I said, I threw it away. I said, maybe I should have ate it. And he says, do you remember eating muskrat at home? And I said, yeah. So, like I said in the first video, I was raised on a lot of wild game. And I think it's a lot better tasting than our farm-raised stuff. And I'm not taking anything away from the farmers. I'm just saying, I would rather have the wild food. It has a distinct flavor. It's not gamey. Wild meat is not gamey. There's no such thing as a gamey taste. Each animal has its own distinct flavor. And it has to be prepared right. I have a lot of people that despise deer meat until they eat the deer meat that I butcher myself. I age my deer anywhere between 14 to 21 days in a refrigerator, on the bone, skin out, and quartered. And it's a little bit of a dry age, and it's aged 14 to 21 days, and it's the best meat. And my wife has even said it's better than the meat that she had from her uncles. That's how my dad taught me how to do it, and that's how we always did it. But I just wanted to bring that to you. That was my first beaver that I ever caught. I think it was, if I would have put the tail there at the bottom of my chin, the nose of the beaver would have touched the sidewalk there where I'm standing. It was over 60 pounds. I can't remember exactly how much it weighed. But I'm 5'9", so you figure from the bottom of my chin to the ground was probably, what, 5 feet long? It actually stretched out. They have different codes for beaver hides. Mine actually came out to be a lap or a blanket beaver that you can put it across your lap. It was a really big round. I had it tanned. I cut some pieces out of it. I was going to make a hat out of it, but I cut some pieces out of it and used it for insoles for a pair of moccasins that I made for my wife. And I had the rest of it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to use it for lining in gloves that I'm going to make out of muskrat hides so that it makes them warmer. I'm going to use them for lining, and I'm going to use the rest of it for lining in hats. I made a coyote hat. I'll show that on a video. I made it like a top hat. It looks sort of like a mix between a top hat and a cowboy hat. Came out pretty good, I think. Has the tail on it. Really looks good to me. But I just wanted to bring that little story to you. I'll be telling some stories here, and that's the story about my beaver and how Beaver BBQ is the best deer barbecue that my family has ever eaten. So, hey, thanks again for everybody for subscribing. If you're new, how about hitting subscribe, like the video, and give me some comments down below. You ever been beaver trapping? Let me know how you catch them. If you want to learn about beaver trapping or any kind of trapping, all you gotta do is ask me some questions in the comments. I'm glad to help anybody. I love taking the younger generation out and teaching them. I have a friend whose son that I taught to trap, and he wound up getting traps, and he's now trapping on their property. I do the snapping turtles, like I said. He got into doing snapping turtles. He's 15 years old. He got into doing snapping turtles, and he's now catching them out of their pond, cleaning them, and they're eating them for his family. So ask questions. I'm glad to answer all of them. So hey, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next video.